Okay, so in this video we are looking at how to plan out our program, and what I've got in front of me, which is on the screen here, is a program description. And the first step I would do would be to read through the program description once fully before trying to plan anything. So you want to get that general idea of what all the pieces of the program are and what the program is doing. I've already done that. So on my second read through, I'm going to go through and make notes about what kind of structures I can use, what I would like to make into a function, and what I would use a do loop for, a while loop, or an if structure, or a class structure. So starting at the top, it says a program is required to calculate roughly whether several pieces of furniture can fit into a room. That's fine. For each piece of furniture, the user must enter the type of furniture it is and the length and the width of it. So what we've got here is a collection of data that is going to go with a particular thing. Right? So a piece of furniture, it's a piece of furniture, and it's going to have a length and a width and a type. And I'm going to be using this over and over because it says for each piece of furniture. So right there is my indication that perhaps this is a good spot to have a class. Okay, so I'm going to make a class furniture because I want the type, the length, and the width to always be associated with that piece of furniture. And okay, so then the user should have the following menu options. So if I'm going to have a menu, it's probably wise to have a function that just displays the menu and returns the user's selected option to the main program. So I would make that a function. That's another thing. The user should have the following menu options: enter the room, name, and area. That would be another function. Okay. And I'm going to write a note here that I'm probably going to need a by reference use in that function to enter that data, because I'm entering two things. I want to change two things. Enter the furniture type, length, and width. So I would make this another function, but because it's a function that is dealing with the data that's going to belong to this class, this is going to be a class member function. Okay. Calculate the total floor area taken up by the furniture. That is also going to use the data, the length and the width, from the class. So that's going to be another class member function. And display a summary with room name, area, total furniture floor area, and number of pieces of furniture. So that would also be a function, and it's just going to be a regular function, not part of the class. That'd be a function. Okay, and it says the user should be able to enter as many pieces of furniture as they desire by choosing that menu option again and again. So the program's going to have this ability to keep displaying the menu over and over and allowing the user to pick options. So I'm going to use some kind of looping structure to keep displaying that menu. At any time they can choose to calculate floor area or display results. If they choose to display the summary prior to calculating the furniture floor area should be 0. So that's just a note, that we should have some default values in our program. So what we don't want is for the program to have an error if they try to pick that option. Okay, so looking at this, we've got a class structure, we have a function, another function, two class member functions over here, another function, and a loop. So next we're going to look at these functions in a little bit more detail and look at what data needs to go to the function and does the function return anything. Okay, so now I am working on planning the functions that go with my program. So one of the functions was to display the menu options, and if I go back to my PowerPoint for a second, we wanted a function to display the menu options, and we've got 4 options, plus we're going to need an option that says whether the person wants to quit or not, so that's 5 options. Okay, so the thing that we're looking at is what does the function do. So it's going to display menu options, and we want to look at, does it take any values in? And the answer to that would be no, because it doesn't need any information from any other part of the program. So does not take in values, and it does have to return a value. It returns the user's menu choice. And if we decide that the choices are A, B, C, D, and E, what it's going to return is going to be a character, which is a char. Okay, so in writing over here, I'm going to write the declaration for this function. The first thing you have is what type does it return, and we said it returns a character. Okay, that's all lowercase. Then we need a name for our function. It should be something descriptive, so I'm going to say display menu. And it doesn't take anything in, so I'm going to put void in between the brackets, and that is the declaration for that function. So that is one of the functions. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, the other functions we needed a function for entering the room name and area. Okay, so let's do that. Room name and area. Okay, so the second function, this function allows user to enter room name and area, and because it needs to change 2 pieces of data, so room name and area, that we have to use a by reference function, because a function can only return one value, but we actually want to change 2 things, room name and area. So in order to do that, we're going to make a function that returns nothing. Okay, so it doesn't return anything, but it takes in room name and area by reference. Okay, so the function call for that function would be void, because it's returning nothing, and then I'm going to call it enter room data, and it would take in two, room name is going to be a string, so it's going to take in a string, and I need an ampersand to indicate that that's going to be by reference, and the room area is going to be a float, and that is going to be by reference. Okay, so that is the declaration. I would need a semicolon for the function to enter the room data. So it returns nothing, but it's getting two values, or getting two variables by reference, which means it can actually change those variables in the main program. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to continue that process, but I'm going to type now so that I can go a little bit faster. And I'm going to look again. I need my function for furniture type length and width. We said that was a class member function. So class member functions, we had two of them. The first one was to enter the furniture data. It does not return anything, and it doesn't take any data in, so it does not take in any arguments because it already has access to the class data. No, sorry, it does take in arguments. This function is going to have to take in the data that the user entered. Yeah, so it's going to take in user entered data for furniture, because it's got to get the values from somewhere. So it doesn't return anything. It would be a void. Ooh, auto capitalization. And then we have to give it a name. I would give it the name set values because it's going to set the values in the class. The furniture has a type, a length, and a width. So type is going to be a string, length and width are both floats. And this is a class member function, so our class is going to be called furniture, so we need to associate it with that class. So in that regard, let's put our class up here. So we're going to have a class called furniture, and the data it's going to have is a string for type of furniture, float, for length, and float for width. So just so we can keep in mind how we wanted our class to be. Better. Okay. And all of these should be over. Okay. So Okay, so that was one of the class member functions. So I'll number that number 1. The other class member function that we wanted was to calculate the floor area for that particular piece of furniture. So it's going to calculate floor area for a particular piece of furniture. Okay. In this case, it has to return the floor area. It's got to send that back to the main program. And then it also has to, no, it doesn't have to take in any values. Because it has access to the class data already. So it doesn't have to take that information in. So this function would be returning a float, which is the floor area. It's a class member function, so I have to put the class name first. And I'll just call it floor area for a name. It doesn't take in any values. Okay. Okay, so I've typed up my plan for the functions. Oops, drawing on the screen. And the first function, if you recall, was to enter the room name and area. We said it didn't return anything, so that's why we have a void in the declaration. We have the name of the function, which is enter room data, and we have the two things that it takes in, which is room area and name. This ampersand here indicates that they are being sent by reference, because we have to actually access that variable in the main program in order to change its value. And you need to do that if you need your function to return two things, as we do, because a function can actually only return one thing. But by sending these by reference, we can change their value. The second function we needed was to display the menu options. It doesn't take in any arguments, so that's what this void is for here. It has the name display menu, display underscore menu, and it returns the menu option chosen by the user, which if they have options A, B, C, D, those are characters, so it's going to return a character. The next function that we had, that we need, which we haven't talked about yet, is we needed a function to display the summary of information. So it doesn't return anything because it's just printing out information, so its declaration is going to start with a void. We gave it a name, which is display summary. It has to take in the things that it's going to display for us, so that is room area is a float, total furniture floor area is a float, and number of pieces is an integer, because of course you're not going to have half a piece of furniture. Okay. The next thing we want to look at is the class that we made and the class member functions. Okay, for our class and member functions, first we have to define the class itself. So the name of the class is furniture, and then we have all the data that is going to go along with that furniture. So we've got a string, which is the type of furniture, float, which is the length of the furniture, and a float, which is the width of the furniture. Then we have the the functions that go along with the class. So they're member functions of the class, and they have access to all of this data here. So the first function is a function to allow the user to enter the furniture data. It doesn't return anything. It does take in user entered data for furniture. So this is the variables that the user enters the values into, and it's going to save those here in the class data. So doesn't return anything. That makes it a void. We gave it the name set values. Okay, when we define it, we're going to need to know that it goes with the furniture class. So this furniture here is the same as that furniture there, and that's needed for the definition. It's not needed for the declaration because we're going to declare it right inside the class, and we'll look at that when we do the program. The variable or the data that it's taking in a string for the type. It's going to take in a float for the length and a float for the width. And the next function we had was floor area for a particular piece of furniture. It's going to return the floor area because the main program is going to display that. So it's returning a float. We gave it the name floor area, and again we said it belongs to the furniture class. And it doesn't have to take in any values, so that's a void. And this is because it has access to the class data. So it already has access to this length and width that are up here in the class. Okay. Okay, so in summary, we had 3 functions to enter the room data, display the menu, and display the summary. We had one class for the furniture, okay, and we had 2 member functions that belong as part of that class. And remember, we need this word furniture when we do the definition, but we won't need it for the declaration because we'll declare it right in that class. Okay, so now that I have all this information summarized of what functions I'm going to use and how I've structured my class, I need to make a plan for my overall program. And remember, we said because we wanted that menu to repeat that we were going to need some sort of loop. So generally, looking at the structure of our program, I'm going to start up at the top here. The first thing we would have is our include statements. Okay, so we've got our include statements. Then we would have our class definition. That would go up here. Okay, we could put our function definitions up here, but I think they're better going after the main program. So the only thing we need to put up here is function declarations. Okay, and remember, there's 3 things we have to do when we use a function. We have to declare it, define it, and then we have to actually use it. So the function declarations is the first thing that's going to go up there. Then we're going to have our main program structure, which is void main void. Okay, open bracket. I'm going to put a bracket way down here after this end bracket for the main function. So this means this is the end of main. Okay, after this is where we're going to put our function definitions. Okay, so I'm just going to note that those I'm going to put at the very end. Okay, everything inside of here is what our main function has to do. And we're not going to have too many lines because a lot of what our program is doing is already contained within the function definitions themselves. So To think about this a little bit, our program has to do a couple of things. It has to print out this menu, let the user pick an option, and depending on the option the user picks, it's going to do something, and then it's going to allow the user to go back to the menu and pick whether to do something else. So everything that is happening within our program is happening within some kind of loop, because we always keep going back to that menu until the user picks quit. So the kind of loop we need, because we have to display the menu first before they can do anything, is a do while loop. So it's going to start with do, and it's going to end with while. And this is just pseudocode, not actual code, so I don't have to put actual code here, but when it's going to quit is when the user presses option E, or we could call it option Q, right? If Q makes more sense. So but really it's while the user has not chosen the quit option. Okay, while the user has not chosen to quit. Everything else is going to happen within my do loop. So the first thing I have to do is display the menu, and luckily I've got a function right here called display menu. So I would call that function, it would display the menu and return what the user's option was. Okay, it's returning this character here. Actually, the other thing we have to add is in here we have to declare variables, any variables that we need in the main program. Okay, I'm not going to define all of them now, but I have to declare them. So it's going to display the menu option. We're going to call that function. Doesn't take in anything. And then we need some sort of an if structure that says, okay, if they've entered this option, do this. If they've entered this option, do this. So we could use an if, or we could use a switch, might be a better option. And this function would be returning something. So it would say I declared a char user input, then user input would be in here. I don't need all that in my pseudocode, but I'm just explaining that. So then I would be switching on user input, and if user input is A, the first option was to enter the room data. So I would call that function, enter room data, and I would send it whatever variables it needs. Okay, I don't need to write them in now. If it was case B, that was to set furniture values. So set furniture values. Okay, and it's just pseudocode, so I'm just writing the words. Then case C is to display furniture floor area. Or to calculate. And case D was to display summary. Now in the quit option, we don't actually have to do anything because the program is just going to quit once it gets down to this while and checks it. So that right there is the whole structure of our program. We have a switch for a decision-making structure here, and around it we've got a do-while loop there that allows them to keep entering information. Okay, and we'll need, we'll need a few more variables, and we might have to do a few more things within our case structure. Because within case C, we're calculating the furniture floor area. We also have to calculate the total furniture floor area as well. So I'm just going to make that note. Okay, but we've got the basic structure of our program down. We know we're going to need a while loop and a switch. And notice all these details of what is happening when we enter room data or set the furniture values. That all happens in the function definitions at the end of our program. Okay, so that all happens down here. And that is a decent plan, and from this plan we would write our program.